In what ways does your media product use, develop, and challenge forms and conventions of real media products?
I adhere to the conventions of a supernatural horror film by using a house as the setting, because in your typical supernatural film, the location is usually somewhere abandoned or like in a suburban town or in a house. So I chose a house because it was easiest to do. So in my trailer, the protagonist moves into a house, recently moved in, which is also conventional. That promotes the fear of the unknown and the intruding of personal space, which is what makes a supernatural film interesting. Also, by using a house, it's very isolated, and examples of films that use a house as a setting are The Woman in Black, The Conjuring, Insidious. In terms of the actual narrative, so usually in a supernatural horror film, the plot line is usually the protagonist moves into somewhere new or is in a different place to where they usually are. They start experiencing mysterious, strange, paranormal activity, and then it's usually a ghost that's died, unhappy, doesn't want to go to the side. So the protagonist, then it is then up to them to figure out why this ghost died or why this person died and is now a spirit haunting the house. So in my trailer, that's exactly what happens. Protagonist moves into somewhere new, house being haunted, paranormal activity, and then the protagonist then takes it upon herself to find out why things are happening and who's died and who lived here before she did. In terms of sound, most supernatural trailers and films use a non-diegetic soundtrack, as this is used to create tension and suspense, and it guides the audience to feel nervous and cautious of what's about to happen. This is seen in Paranormal Activity, it's used in Insidious.
I want to leave this house.
And I also use it in my own trailer at various parts where I want to make the audience feel like something is about to happen. I use a soundtrack in my trailer over the bit where protagonist's cousin is going up the stairs, and it sounds like a chorus is singing behind it, and it sounds quite childlike, a nursery rhyme kind of song, a classical nursery rhyme kind of song, which is therefore conventional of the genre and again adds to the mood of the trailer. Another conventional sound heard in supernatural trailers is laughter, but it's usually distorted or erratic, like a crazy laugh, and this again just adds to the unusual, unnatural, creepy feel of the trailer. This is seen in movies like The Boy. It's usually a child's laugh, but it can be an adult's laugh. I personally use an adult's laugh in my trailer because I could not find a child's laugh, and then I just altered the pitch to make it sound younger. In most supernatural horror films / trailers, they don't really show you the antagonist, so the ghost. They don't really show you a face. It might be like a figure or the back of one or a hand. And I followed this convention by only using brief clips of figures throughout my trailer. I didn't show a face for the antagonist. I just showed its body or the outline of it in the dark, and also a hand as well. A good example of this is in Lights Out. In terms of the narrative again, conformed to Todorov's theory, as in the beginning I briefly showed an equilibrium where the protagonist is just meeting the neighbour, but that was all I had shown. I didn't want to go into too much detail as that isn't the exciting bit. That would be shown in the full movie, so I didn't want to include too much of the equilibrium in my trailer. However, I did show the disequilibrium, the protagonist's cousin getting stuck in the bathroom. I showed the wardrobe door being swung open, the laughter coming from up the stairs. I showed a lot of the disequilibrium. I also conformed to Vladimir's props character roles, because within my trailer you have the hero, or no, you have the heroine, the main protagonist, the female protagonist, Talani, known as Emma, but Talani. Then you have the hero, who is Joe. He helps to restore everything back to normal and back to equilibrium. You have the helper, who is Talani's cousin, who comes round. She just assists in restoring the equilibrium. Then you have the villain, which is not actually seen. There's not actually a character for the villain because he's ambiguous and not an actual person, so that's just shown. I just used various people to pretend to be the villain. There's not one person that was the villain, it was just different people that I'd used for that. And obviously we know that the ghost is the villain because the ghost is a threat to the heroine and is the main reason of all the disruption that's caused. We know that the donor is the priest because she is the one that gives, advice, brings all the equipment to help get rid of the villain. In terms of the institutions I'd used, I had chosen Film District as my main producer for the film because the Film District produced Insidious and The Evil Dead, both which are very popular horror films, and because Insidious was my main inspiration for my trailer, I wanted to use Film District because theirs was also produced by Film District. And Film District is a well-known institution. It's known for producing lots of horror films, so it's therefore a conventional institution to use for a horror film. I have noticed that a few common conventions within film posters are elements such as a billing block, title, tagline, a pull quote, institutions, and a release date. I've therefore decided to use these within my own film poster to ensure that my poster has the professional look of real film posters, and also to ensure that it can be differentiated from my magazine. For example, in order to create my billing block, I downloaded the font Steel Tongues from Dafont website, as it mimics the look of a real billing block you'd see on a professional film poster, because I wanted my poster to be very professional looking. The tagline I chose for my poster was "Evil lives here." I was inspired by a film poster I had seen, advertising 2-bedroom, 1-bath. The plotline of the film was similar to mine, therefore I decided to use this tagline. I thought that it would complement my poster perfectly, as my narrative takes place in a house which is said to have a spirit living in it. Therefore, the tagline reveals the main idea of my narrative without giving too much away, which would therefore engage my target demographic. I've chosen various institutions to associate with my film and have shown this by including the institution icons such as New Line Cinema, Film District. I've included those at the bottom of my poster so that people who see my poster know that it's of a high quality because it's produced by these institutions who are well known for making very popular horror films. For example, New Line Cinema produced movies like It, The Conjuring, so I wanted to incorporate those institutions in my own poster. I've taken a lot of inspiration from a particular film called The Woman in Black. This was my main inspiration for my poster. This film is of a supernatural genre, as is mine, and one of the many posters for this film consists of an extreme close-up of the protagonist's face, in which only half of it is shown. And I think by positioning the main image here so that only half of the face is shown, I think it gives the poster a different look, very different to any other horror film posters, and it just makes it stand out, I think. So I therefore decided to incorporate this into my own poster by having half of the protagonist's face cut off so that only one side of their face is actually showing. Other examples of this with close-ups of the main image are Insidious, The Poltergeist and Annabelle. I've noticed that a common horror film convention to use is serif font within the typography of the poster. Serif font looks quite ancient and withered away, and it adds a historic effect to the poster, I think. Therefore, I've decided to use a similar font in my poster. Film posters such as The Conjuring and Deliver Us From Evil use this convention, and by using the font website I managed to find a similar font to create my desired effect. Another convention I've come across, which is used within many popular horror films, is making specific letters or one letter a different colour to the rest of the letters in the title. A prime example of this is in Scream 4, in which the A in Scream is also number 4 and it's in a red font, whereas the rest of the letters in Scream are white. This therefore highlights the number 4, which make it apparent to the reader that this is the 4th film. It also just makes the title jump out at the reader and makes that particular film poster stand out amongst other posters. Further examples of films that have used the same technique are Insidious and The Woman in Black 2. I have challenged the convention of using red as a statement colour in my poster by using the house style of green, black and white. I've decided to use this instead because from observing a number of posters, red tends to be a recurring statement colour, and it obviously connotes the idea of blood or death or danger. However, specifically, supernatural horror tends to be associated with green and blue colours because the phantom or ghost is often represented in a blue light or in a green light, and due to my media package being within the supernatural subgenre of horror, I've avoided using conventional red colours and have decided to use a more distinctive colour like green instead. There are examples of horror films within the supernatural genre that use green and blues instead of reds. A few such as Wraith, Dark Mirror, The Woman in Black. Within my magazine, I've used a colour palette of green and blue tints, such as in the main image, the skyline, the drop shadow of the title, the cover lines. I've done this because the colour green, or blue even, is very conventional of the supernatural horror genre. I've purposely ensured that the blues and greens and colours within my magazine are all on the same palette, that they all complement each other, because this is something that very professional magazines do. Apart from the boost and the little plus section at the bottom, which is in a yellow colour, everything else is in a blue-green colour palette. The boost is just jump out at the reader because it says free post inside, and I've noticed that that's a conventional element to have in a magazine, especially one associated with horror, because people tend to pick up magazines that have something free inside, and so I decided to incorporate a boost into my own magazine in a bright, bold yellow colour so that it jumps out at the reader and encourages them to want to buy it. I've also included in the plus section just a little bit more information about the content inside the magazine. I've noticed that this is also a conventional element to have in a magazine. Lots of horror magazines have it, so I also therefore decided to incorporate it into my own magazine. A perfect example of a magazine that has a plus section and a boost on almost every cover is Scream magazine. The yellow is actually very conventional for a horror magazine, because little facts or information that a magazine wants to jump out at the reader, they tend to use a yellow colour, ensure that those specific elements on the page are really bold and made apparent to the reader. To make the genre more apparent, I've used a phantom effect in my main image to connote the presence of a supernatural being. I decided to create a face for the magazine because that's what people who enjoy horror films would be drawn to. They'd be drawn to the villain, they'd be drawn to the antagonist, so I decided to create a face for the antagonist. It therefore attract those fans of horror, paranormal activity, and just to further signify the genre that it's in, and also create the idea that there's a presence lurking, much like I have created in my trailer and poster. I also decided to use an ambiguous image of the antagonist in my magazine because I've not actually seen anything like it in any other magazines, in any other horror magazines, so I feel like it makes my magazine stand out amongst the others, which